Love shouldn't have to fight this hard to survive, but in If Beale Street Could Talk, passion collides with injustice in the most devastating way.
When a young Black couple's love story is shattered by a system built to destroy Black lives, the film forces us to ask, is justice even real or just a privilege for some?
With breathtaking beauty and unbearable heartbreak, Barry Jenkins delivers this James Baldwin classic story so that it feels both timeless and terrifyingly relevant.
Keep watching, because this story will leave you breathless, heartbroken, and forever changed.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. The executive producer of this video is King James, who requested this film through Axiom Amnesia's Deep Dive on Demand program that we'll tell you more about later.
And there will be spoilers, so you might want to hop on off the call if you don't want them.
Yes. All right, well, let's take a quick look at the background of this film. It came out in 2018, so that's important to know. And King James, who requested this film, he made the statement that If Beale Street Could Talk should have won Best Picture at the Oscars over Green Book in 2019. And it did win Best Picture at the Independent Spirit Awards that night.
Green Book.
But, before, though. Yeah, the night before. So I don't know. Like, do you think that, because we saw Green Book, it's been a while since I saw Green Book. And to compare both of these.
Green Book was a white savior movie, I think, if I remember correctly, but I think that's what it was.
It definitely was.
Or it was a Driving Miss Daisy type. It was one of those.
But it wasn't an all Black film. And I do think that works against films when they are all Black films.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah. I also want to take another excerpt of something that King James said about this film. He said, if you're unfamiliar with the work of the late Black American novelist James Baldwin, the socially conscious writer broke barriers throughout his career with stories about a host of complex and personal issues, including racism, religion, and sexuality. The beauty of Baldwin's writing once again resonates in Beale Street, thanks to Barry Jenkins, who won an Oscar for screenwriting and a nomination for directing the 2016 Best Picture, Moonlight. In the hands of Jenkins, Baldwin's 1974 novel of the same name is adapted into an observant and touching story of young, requited love, but also one that shoots straight to the heart of how systemic racism has shattered Black lives for generations. And I mean, that just kind of really sums it up, what has happened in this film. And so, talking about Barry Jenkins, he is the director of this film and his vision for the film. After he won that Oscar for Moonlight is when he decided to try to bring If Beale Street Could Talk to life from the book that James Baldwin wrote in 1974. And he was actually the first director who was granted permission by Baldwin's estate to adapt one of the author's works. So just imagine that, right? Because they don't just give anybody permission to, and I like estates that are like this. They're not like, anybody want to use this? Good, we making money. Like, they are protecting his legacy, and they only wanted to entrust it to someone who they felt would do a good job.
Yeah, I think that's probably how it should be.
Yeah.
But you still don't know if they're going to do a good job or not, but you just got to trust. It's who you trust.
And you look back at like what they did previously, and you just hope that this one will go well. And
which would mean you won't give new people the opportunity.
That is probably what it means. And if you got to pick, somebody who's been nominated for an Oscar, because again, I think that chances are the estate is usually the family, or at least somebody in the family who wants to see the name of their loved one live on. And if the film could win an Oscar, well, amazing, right? And so this would be appealing if hey, if somebody's gotten nominated for an Oscar and could win one, they can be nominated and win another. And we saw that, he did get nominated. It just, it didn't win. Let's talk about James Baldwin's influence. The film does stay remarkably true to his novel, which explores systemic racism, love, and the struggle of the Black families in the United States of America. And Jenkins did use Baldwin's actual words in voiceovers to retain the novel's lyrical style. So there were a lot of these little things. I think he worked really hard to try to stay true to James Baldwin and his vision in the novel itself. What I'll also say is James Baldwin was so, I think, revolutionary in his thought, and probably for many reasons, not just being a Black man. And I appreciate his works for that reason. Had you read the book? Because I feel like I read it,
No.
but I didn't remember the book. So maybe I had just heard of it, when I was younger, but I don't know if I read the book. So
I don't read a lot of fiction.
Yeah, so I don't have a good comparison point for, between this and the book. I'm sure somebody in the comments will have that, though.
Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply. Those of you who are interested, we do have some slots for co-executive producers that are a little bit less expensive. And so if you check our website at axiom.app, you'll be able to be one of the co-executive producers along with one other person for a limited set of films that we are interested in funding, or videos on films that we want to fund. And then let's just talk about the 1970s aesthetic. The film meticulously recreated 1970s Harlem with period-accurate fashion, lighting, and music. Jenkins and his cinematographer, James Laxton, used warm, intimate lighting to capture the film's romantic yet melancholic tone. And it is a dark film, but when it's bright, it's really bright. It's very vivid. And what I really enjoyed about this film is the colors that were used, the outfits, and I just felt like Black folks were fancy. When she's in this yellow coat on the best day of their lives, when they've just gotten the rented a loft that they were looking for, they were so happy and they're walking, and they just looked so wonderful. And I loved the visuals because not all depictions of Black folks are where, we're wearing rags or chains, or, we are a fancy people, and I love that was on screen. What did you think about kind of the 70s look of things?
Yeah, I like the set design and all of that. Because when I watch these movies, I'm like, okay, so let me see if I feel like I'm not in this time anymore. And I think it did a good job.
Yeah. Now, this movie did have somebody who won an Oscar, and that was Regina King, who won the Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actress for her role as Sharon Rivers, who's the main character, Tish, her mother. Her emotionally charged performance, especially in the scene where she pleads for justice in Puerto Rico, became one of the film's most talked about moments. And Regina King is just a clutch player. She is the GOAT, and she has been in the game for she is one of the greatest of all times, I think, as far as actresses and Black actresses go. And she's been in stuff for many years, and I love the fact that we got to see her evolution, and she's played many different characters very believably. And you know how some people can only play one character, but they play it really good, so they're sort of typecast into those roles. But she could be the loving wife, she could be in The Harder They Fall, this renegade cowgirl type, so she can play believably all of these different characters, and that's obviously the hallmark of an amazing actress. So yeah. And then there is the score, right? So the film had this jazz infused score that was composed by Nicholas Britell, who also worked on Moonlight as well. And so the soundtrack has these, lush orchestral themes that play a crucial role in setting the film's emotional depth and reflective tone. Now, it's hard for me because I am not exactly a fan of jazz music. And so But I get it. Like, I get it. Like, I appreciated what it's supposed to do. But what I'll say is that music didn't move me the same way as maybe if it was something else. And I can't exactly say what that something else is. Maybe some blues, maybe some, old school R&B. I don't know. But it was all right. And I get where it was supposed to. I think it achieved what it was supposed to achieve for most people. And I will accept myself as more of an outlier. So tell us about the cast.
We have Kiki Lane, who plays Tish Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
We have Stephan James, who is Fonnie Hunt. Regina King is in here, Tisha's mother, Sharon. Brian Tyree Henry, who I really like, and I like to watch all his stuff. I don't know why, I just find him good.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Fonnie's friend, Daniel. Coleman Domingo is in here. That's Tisha's father. Dave Franco is Levy. Tiana Paris is in here. That's Tisha's sister. Ingenue Ellis Taylor is Fonnie's mother. And Michael Beach is in here, and that's Fonnie's father.
And I love that the cast is, the main cast, the parents, and, are these solid actors who we can, we know we're going to get a solid performance from. So let us go into a summary of the film. And we have so many things to talk about that we're just going to push through and kind of give you the gist of what happens in the movie. And as always, we break this down into 3 acts. Act 1, it gives us the lay of the land. What's going on? Who are the players? Act 2 presents a problem that must be solved. And then Act 3 is the resolution, hopefully a happy one. And it's the end of the film. So Act 1, we'll call this Love and Devastation. Set in 1970s Harlem, If Beale Street Could Talk follows 19-year-old Tish Rivers and her fiance, Alonzo Fonnie Hunt, who are deeply in love and eager to build a life together. Their world is shattered when Fonnie is falsely accused of the R word, of a Puerto Rican woman named Victoria Rogers, a crime he did not commit. The arrest is driven by a racist cop, Officer Bell, who holds a personal vendetta against Fonnie. Meanwhile, Tish discovers that she's pregnant with Fonnie's child, a revelation that sparks mixed reactions. Her family is supportive, but Fonnie's religiously rigid mother condemns her. So in Act 2, we have the fight for justice. So determined to free Fonnie, Tish and her family, especially her mother Sharon, fight tirelessly against the broken legal system. Sharon even travels to Puerto Rico to find Victoria and convince her to recant, but the traumatized woman refuses. Meanwhile, Fonnie struggles in jail, facing the cruel realities of incarceration while clinging to hope through visits with Tish. His best friend Daniel, who previously served time for another wrongful conviction, serves as a reminder of how the system traps Black men. As the trial looms, the case is not going well. They can't find their witness. All of these things are leading to reasons why Fonnie should be free. Clearly, they are having trouble proving that he is guilty. However, the systemic racism in place has the DA, just keeping him in prison, keep delaying the trial, not giving him a speedy trial, and making him prove his innocence. And they don't even have the evidence. And Fonnie is remaining in prison during this time. So then we get to Act 3, a hopeful tragedy. Despite the injustice, Tish gives birth to their son, raising him with stories of his father's love. And in the final moments, an older Tish and their child visit Fonnie in prison, where he now wears the scars of incarceration. The DA purposely kept pushing the trial dates back each time Fonnie's defense came up with evidence proving that Fonnie didn't commit the crime. As a result of these pressures, Fonnie took a plea deal, sacrificing his innocence for a shorter sentence, or at least to begin serving his real time. Their love endures, but the tragedy remains. Justice was never truly an option for them. And so that's really what happens in the film. And so let's talk about our impressions, the first impressions we have. The vivid colors and cinematography. I do think it was very beautiful, in the film. It was sad and beautiful at the same time. And maybe that's what makes it hit hard, because, when you see a real love story and it's told vividly, and you could see the colors and the love and the angles that they're filming from. And then you see the tragedy, you see him behind glass. It's just, it hits harder for those reasons. What did you think of the cinematography?
Yeah, so it's a struggling couple, a young couple, kind of like as you expect, especially with not as many opportunities as we may have now, right? So they're living in a spot where you expect it to look like dilapidated and all this stuff, and they're living in the hood in the time of the 70s, which was crazy in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
So so you put all that together, and I think they were able to capture that. And of course, they had the wardrobe and everything, but the shots were pretty good. The separation from backgrounds, which I really love when they do this. And yeah, I think it looked very good, right? But in terms of, I think making it dark is a cheat to make us feel a certain way, right? Instead of using different types of shot compositions.
And I always feel, and you're right, because I do have this emotional reaction when I see these films that are very dark. And I'll just say, from a practical perspective, forget about the art for just a minute. From a practical perspective, dark films are very hard to watch when you're not in the theater, because some of these films are so dark that, and especially like I think about a movie like
Nope.
I think like about a movie like Jordan Peele's Nope, that was so dark that we basically had, we're watching it at home, light is hitting the TV sometimes, and it's like scenes where you just like, I don't even know, the screen might as well be black because I can't see what's happening on the screen. And when things get too dark, I feel like that's a result that can happen sometimes. It's not as bad as some movies that I've seen as far as the darkness of it, but the experience when you're watching from home is different.
And they really like to try to be like, oh, this is more natural light, and put really dark shadows on people. But I want to see them acting when they're good actors.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of like if they could take stage lighting in a way, because no matter what happens on a stage, it's pretty much like on Broadway.
But you're not going to think it look good though, right?
This is true.
That's why like TV shows or sitcoms and stuff, they just they're bright and they don't look good from a cinematic perspective.
That's true. So what about this decision to tell the story in a nonlinear fashion with all of these flashbacks? How did you feel about that? Because I don't think I preferred it. I feel like in storytelling, and maybe I've just listened to too many stories, right? I feel like in storytelling, when you're making me wait unnecessarily, like I don't really know, it's out of order, and then I gotta wait to see how was this baby made,
right? And you're not revealing the things. I think that maybe that's just like, to me, it seemed like a tactic from TV shows, right? Where we need to show this backstory of this other thing. But I think that what they're trying to do it all the time now, it's like folks on YouTube and other places, right, trying to get retention, basically making everything as if it's a thriller, suspense, mystery, right? And you can just tell me what happened as long as the story and the plot is good. You don't have to hold back so much and just tell me what's going on.
And I do think the story and the plot was good, and I think it could have worked just as well. Now, I do recognize that the purpose probably might have been to make you feel even more emotion. Oh, when you find out that this is what happened, and then
So one thing you have to do is you have to, like we always say, you got to make us innocent. You got to humanize the characters first, right? Okay, he's a good man. He's great. You know what I'm saying? He's very loving and stuff. And then when you get to the allegation, then it's like, okay, now I have reason to not believe it. Right. So that's some tactics that work that way. But I think it depends on who you expect your audience to be.
Yeah. Like to me, but again, this film clearly was, I think, for a broader audience, right? This is one of those films that is bringing Black stories to everyone, right?
Yeah, but do you think that's the purpose?
Yeah.
I think that maybe sometimes
yeah, I think it's the purpose because, somebody like James Baldwin or Richard Wright, like with Native Son, because this movie sort of reminded me a lot of Native Son, which was also made into a movie, and Oprah Winfrey starred in it, and that was back in, I think, the 80s when she starred in Native Son. But so the stories are so good. The writers were so good in how they wrote these stories that they become part of, whenever we're studying Black writers, in Black literature, these people's names will always come up, Baldwin and Richard Wright and others, Zora Neale Hurston. And, so these are the names, these are the people who be studied. And it's more so for a broader audience than just Black readers or Black viewers in the case of films about this, right? And then you couple that with somebody who's won an Oscar. So, if you want an Oscar, your films are not with just a Black audience in mind as well, right? And that was what he was bringing to the table to begin with. So that would be my evidence for that. But yeah, how do you feel about the ending? At the end, we see his son is like 3 or 4 years old. His fiance is still coming to see him. He's now in prison, and we don't really know how long he has left, but he has a long way to go, and they're still just trying to be a family just like this.
Why we got all these sad stories like this?
Because they're real. I think because it's real.
Okay.
I think because it's real.
Yeah, all right, but
it's hard.
But when it's real, I know the end too. Right? It don't just end sad and I ain't got no hope and be like at the Inner Hustle and Flow, right? He got 10 months, 12 months. I don't know. Not a lot of time, right? Till he's released. Now I don't even remember exactly, but it wasn't that long. This one is just, you might just be in jail for the rest of your life.
For those of you who read the book, did the book in this same way? What might have made me feel better is even if the son was 10 years old, because the son's like 3 or 4, even if the son was 10 years old and they show up to pick him up, like I want to see them reunited as a family in the end, and it doesn't give me that.
Well, that's not.
Even though he
that's
paid
not
this
real,
price.
right? So at least if it's going to have the sad ending, give me a number or something, right? Or I don't know.
But the drama is in the sadness. Let's just keep it real.
You don't need the drama at the end. You have the drama throughout the film.
So are we able to have the catharsis that is necessary? Because I was happy that they both were there, that they still even, because, she had that baby by herself and with the support of the families and stuff. But she wasn't with her man, the man she loved, the man she made this baby with, the man she wants to be a family with. But you could still see that the love was there. And
so how much did the families come around? Like his family.
I don't
right?
even
So
know.
what happened was, basically when they found out that when Fonny's family found out that she was pregnant, so Fonny's parents didn't really accept this, right? For the most part. And I think the father was more
the
on the
father
side,
was happy,
right?
but the mother wasn't.
And the sisters weren't, right? So did we get somewhere in the film where it's like, all right, they're accepting of this child, or do we got now the knife twisted? Because not only do we know that whether or not he's getting out, that she's just out here with this kid and a family who's not supportive.
I know.
Because it wasn't resolved.
That could be the beauty of it. That could be art imitating life, because so many things will be unresolved. There will be conversations that are not had.
But I'm resolved in the terms of the film. There will be, because she would know if her family was like, nah, we ain't going to be supportive, or if they were like, yeah, all right, bring the baby by. She knows that. We don't know it. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean about stuff being resolved. It's not like this was some random people who you just came by one time and then we never see or hear from them again.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, let us get into some even deeper discussions, right? Let's talk about what is Beale Street. Now, of course, when you hear Beale Street, you're going to think of New Orleans. At least that's what I thought of New Orleans. And I thought of the last time that we had a wonderful, wonderful time in New Orleans some years ago, where we went around Christmas time. And when I tell you we left nothing on the table there, New Orleans didn't owe us anything when we left. But the movie does take place in 1970s Harlem. And why is it this reference to Beale Street if we're talking about Harlem? And so there is a clue to this. And the opening of the film gives us this from James Baldwin. Beale Street is a street in New Orleans where my father, where Louis Armstrong and the Jazz were born. Every Black person born in America was born on Beale Street, born in the Black neighborhood of some American city, whether in Jackson, Mississippi, or in Harlem, New York. Beale Street is our legacy. This novel deals with the impossibility and possibility, the absolute necessity to give expression to this legacy. Beale Street is a loud street. It is left to the reader to discern a meaning in the beating of the drums.
Yeah.
How you take that?
I don't know. I look at NOLA.com, who says that Beale Street isn't in New Orleans. We all know that. It's a street in Memphis, one often described as a poor imitation of New Orleans' Bourbon Street, but one that has its own Memphis-y charms if one can't make the trip all the way to the Crescent City. Right? So anytime I hear Beale Street, I just think of Memphis.
But why do I think of New Orleans? And we were on Beale Street, and I even recounted New Orleans. See what I'm saying?
We're on Beale Street in Memphis.
Oh, okay. But why does it say Beale Street is a street in New Orleans?
I don't know.
James Baldwin may have been geographically challenged, but he was a stone cold literary genius. When he invoked Beale Street in the opening of his 1974 novel, one of the country's first Black-owned business districts existed to him as a lost world of African-American freedom. The name represented the realization of the kind of personal autonomy American capitalism always promises, but which was ultimately denied to people like Tish Rivers and Fonnie Hunt, two young working class kids from Harlem who happened to be Black. And this is from the MemphisFlyer.com. So what are we saying here?
So Baldwin just misstated, right? But the idea of it is like, hey, there are Beale Streets everywhere.
But then the question is, did he misstate it? You know what I'm saying?
So the NOLA.com suggests that maybe he misheard or misremembered where his father said he was born in New Orleans, which is possible, right? And it's not like, hey, let me just start Googling to see if this exists back in the 50s or 60s or whenever, right?
And you know what? Just the same way, and I think, because at first I was like, let me edit this out. But the same way that in my mind, like we have spent time and had fun on both Beale Street, which is actually in Memphis, and Bourbon Street in New Orleans. And did you hear in the beginning, I said, yeah, when I hear Beale Street, it reminds me, I'm thinking of, I see Bourbon Street in my mind. I'm not even thinking about Memphis. And yeah. So that is interesting. Somebody in the comments, help us out. Do you think that James Baldwin misspoke, or do you think that in the context of what he's saying here is that I'm calling Beale Street that I know is in Memphis, I'm saying it's in New Orleans, and I'm also telling you my father and these other people, and this is where jazz was born. But yet you mean, because here you're saying Beale Street is representative of where Black people are and are born and where they are owning the place, right? Where there is economic prosperity and, the so-called American dream for Black people here.
Yeah, so that's when I first saw the quote, because I didn't read the book, I was like, wait, there's a Beale Street in New Orleans? But so the quote is, Beale Street is a street in New Orleans where my father, where Louis Armstrong and the Jazz were born, right? Mm-hmm. Every Black person in America was born on Beale Street. I don't know if it's literal, right?
Which is what I'm saying. So the idea that he didn't know that Beale Street is not in New Orleans,
but it could be.
It could be misspoken the way that I misremember, when clearly I know Beale Street because I've been on Beale Street. I know Beale Street is in Memphis, and I know that Bourbon Street is in New Orleans. But when you present it to me like this and you say it and you're James Baldwin and I'm just thinking to vet it, then I done told a whole story about how we spent. No, we did not spend Christmas on Beale Street. We spent Christmas on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. But,
Right. But it's just like, okay, you create this idea. He could have called it Jake Street, right? Uh-huh. If Jake Street could talk, and it'd be like, hey, all these people were born on Jake Street. Jazz was born on Jake Street. And Jake Street represents this. It could work. And it's done all the time. So, yeah, the title is,
So
Is one of controversy.
yeah. And I mean, I'd have to delve deeper. And again, this, we're having this conversation based on this film, but that is, what he said. And in unpacking it, I even discovered something that I had just glazed over and completely missed in this. I'm glad you noticed it. Why do you think you noticed it? Because you from Louisiana?
Yeah, because and it's talking about jazz and stuff, and I'm like, wait, what is Bill? I'm pretty sure I'm a musician and I'm into music, been into it for a long time. I'm from Louisiana. I never heard of this street where Louis Armstrong and jazz was born, right? So when I'm like, wait, what?
Maybe it's closer.
Maybe
ties.
I just didn't know. Is what I thought.
Because it's just like if somebody was talking about Chicago and they were, saying yes, and the Magnificent Mile is.
It's
Elm
a little
Street
different because I'm not from New Orleans either, though.
But you have a much closer tie to there than I do, let's say.
Yeah.
Much more familiarity. But like I was saying, if it was, if Michigan Avenue, which, part of it is the Magnificent Mile, if somebody was saying, oh, yeah, and that's called Elm, then I'd be like, no, why are you saying that? So maybe, maybe that's it. I don't know why I didn't catch that, but that's wild.
Recent changes here on this platform are making it harder for you to see our latest videos and get notifications. To make sure you don't miss out on anything, we're building our own community, both on our website, axiom.app, and on Patreon with free and paid options available.
Here's the deal. While you can still watch our videos on YouTube, much of our current catalog and many of our upcoming videos will become unlisted and only accessible to our Patreon, axiom.app, and YouTube channel members. We'll be posting links to these unlisted videos directly on Patreon and axiom.app, so you'll be the first to see them. If you're a member.
If you choose the free Patreon option, you will still get access to some exclusive content like watch parties where we watch movies together and give the commentary and other special videos. But premium paid members will get full access to all of our exclusive content. No new account is needed to join our Patreon. Just log in with your existing social media account.
While some of you may find this announcement disappointing, don't worry. We have no plans to leave YouTube at this point, but you guys are our cousins and our tribe, and we refuse to let platform changes tear us apart. So help us stay connected. Join us on Patreon today at patreon.com/axiomamnesia. You can check the links down below or in the comments. But let's also talk now about the ending and the decision to take a plea deal. So like we mentioned earlier, Trish and their son go visit Fonnie in prison toward the end of the movie. And the son has drawn a picture with his release date on it. And when Fonnie looks at the picture, he just seems deflated and sad and disappointed by it. But then he's just like, okay, well, let me just go ahead and continue my visit. Look at this. Let's eat. Let's, do what we do during these visits because this is the only time we can be a family together. And then the film ends and My Country 'Tis of Thee is played as the credits roll. I mean, the irony of that. I mean, My Country 'Tis of Thee, the sweet land of liberty, while you behind bars, while all of the things that are espoused as ideals of this country are not extended to you, a citizen, all of this. And then, of course, it is a version of My Country 'Tis of Thee that is very spicy.
I think that
black.
took us out of the realm of where we were in the film, though. Because it made it broader, right? We're telling this story, this interpersonal story of, very intimate story of a family, right? And I think that's just a broader idea, right? That's just there, that takes away from the main ideas of the story in itself, right? Because I don't think the story is really broadly about, America and our relation or whatever in it, right? In that sense, about freedom and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, well, no, I think it is. I think it's showing how this story is connected directly. How ironic this is taking place in a place that talks about freedom.
Yeah.
Talks about how wonderful, I mean,
that could be every story.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. But yeah, I guess.
So in the end, though, Fonnie does take a plea deal. And they've been holding up his case, like we pointed out. Like, how do we feel about him taking this plea deal? Because we did see examples in recent history, like with the YSL case that was really long and just took place, where even in the middle of the trial, people were taking plea deals.
We talked about it with American Violet.
We talked about that with American Violet, which is,
because
we talked about that with American Violet.
So the thing we seen at the end, he has his family right there and he's trying to get to them as soon as possible. So that's probably was the quickest way, right? Was to just take the plea. See, that's just twisting the knife over and over.
Does it matter that we don't know how much time he has?
Does it matter?
Does it matter?
That's what I was saying.
Because when he was looking at it, like, yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could just be like, he'll be home soon.
Because apparently what happened was the son was probably like, why is he locked up? Because as he's getting older, well, why do we have to go there to visit daddy? Why can't daddy be with us? Why can't, and then they're probably telling him when he was younger, daddy will be home soon, or daddy will be, And so she gave him a date, the son. She's like, this is when he'll come home. She probably got sick of him asking, right?
Yeah.
And she gave him a date. So now this date is what he is looking forward to. He's drawing this date on every picture. Like, that is just tragic.
Exactly. See, that's why I say about the capstone.
The capstone.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying about the capstone. So we got all that, and the capstone is America, right? Man, that part is a relationship between a son and his father.
Which is interrupted by America.
Yeah.
But
it's a lot more nuanced, right? So the thing too was he was accused by a Puerto Rican woman, kind of, right? And accused maybe even by some force and coercion, right?
Well, we have to just explain that part because that we kind of glazed over in the summary.
Yeah.
So what happened was this woman, and the people in the story even believe that she was actually R-worded, right? But when she went to report it and they start looking, then Fonnie comes up. Why does Fonnie come up? Because Fonnie had an interaction with this officer separate and apart from that, where the officer was like, oh, I'll see you again. Because he was just going to arrest him for little of nothing after this man in a store had put his hands while they were out on a date and had put his hands on Tish. And so he intervened and was like, what's going on? But of course, whenever anything like this happens, then you have this officer coming to, basically put this young black man in his place. And because a white woman intervened, who was, I think, maybe the store owner, then the cop had to back off. And he was like, well, I'll see you again later. And so then when the cop gets the opportunity, who is he fingering but Fonnie to say, hey, this is the guy, this is the one, right? And so Victoria, the victim, does say that they told her to point him out. And he was presented to her and she looked like it, and she don't really know. She's just like, I know this thing happened to me and somebody needs to pay for it. She is very traumatized, even still. And even as the mother, Regina King's character is going to please recant your story because, you are a woman. We know, we understand.
Right.
We have children, and you are helping to convict somebody who was innocent. Please. And the woman had a meltdown and just crashed out, and she could not get her to recant. So this is also one of those things where you putting somebody in jail for your life, for life, but you're also suffering.
Huh? Yeah. So
that's what happened.
Yeah, so he had a friend, Daniel, who claimed to have been wrongfully incarcerated, and he got very emotional when talking to Fonnie about that, right?
Right.
So, we did have that sort of a thing that was going on throughout the film, right? This idea of incarceration and freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'd seen this big part of manhood, right? Because you talked about at the end, this son looking towards his father, who basically can't provide, right? Especially now that he's locked up. But you have I think it was Frank Hunt, who was questioning manhood in a white world when he had a conversation with Fonnie's father. And then they basically came to the conclusion that, basically the white man been stealing, right? Yeah, and then how they start basically to raise money, right? And, figure out, hey, I can steal too. And so then after this incident with the white shop owner and the cop, Fonnie tells Tish, you don't need to protect me, right? So you had the white shop owner who protect Fonnie and Tish from the cops, but Tish stepped in to try to protect Fonnie, right? First. And then they had the conversation. He's like, you don't have to protect me because, that's, I think, felt like something to his manhood where he's supposed to be the protector and all of this.
Right. And I think in general, that is the expectation, within Black culture and the broader culture, is that there is protection that men offer women just in general. And he was like, look, don't be trying to protect me. I got me and you, and don't try to protect me. And I think the hard part is that because of the way things go in this country with injustice and everything, there are situations where the woman, wants to protect the man, but also can, right? Just
Right.
to say, yes.
But Tish can't, right? Not with a cop.
No, yeah.
You know what
not
I'm
in that
saying? So
situation,
that too. And it's a lot different from Get Out, right? Where they get pulled over and it seems like she's protecting Chris. Rose is protecting Chris.
Right.
Right. But in these times.
Well, she has a privilege to be able to protect
right,
him.
Exactly.
And
it's, I think, shows that women want to protect too, right? And I think a lot of times we just forget about that and basically just ignore it, their need to protect. And just be like, you don't need to try to protect. That's what I do, when everyone feels the need to protect people in their lives.
And I think that maybe if we're limiting it to physical protection, right? I think he was fine with her protecting him in not physical ways, right? But the physical protection, he's like, leave that up to me. But women protect men all the time in areas where it's not physical,
but
right?
But do you see that as physical, as being confronted by a cop?
She physically put her body in between them like she was about to do something.
I don't think that's physical protection, right? The threat was about getting arrested. You know what I'm saying? That's more of the whole freedom thing.
Yeah, that might be gray but she used her physical body in that sense. And by not physical, what I was really meaning was like how women can peep certain things happening and they're like, hey, let me help you navigate away from that. Or, other ways that women protect the men in their lives. Right.
But in the idea of manhood, to think that a woman who is trying to protect you from incarceration is basically takes away from your manhood, right? Or put her into the realm of a man.
Yeah. And I think he just wasn't seeing it that way. I think he was seeing like you could get hurt and seeing it more just from the physical perspective as opposed to the, other ways that she was.
But he said, you don't have to protect me, not that you could get hurt.
Why do you think he said that? You don't have to.
I think it has to do with what people think their manhood is. Yeah.
Well,
right. Because we hear it over and over and over.
Yeah. But the other thing is that Fonny, with the way he exhibited his manhood, he tried to be strong in jail. He didn't want to admit that what all was going on, but we got bird's eye. And we see he's been beat up and we don't know what else he's going through. We do see while he's in there, he's crying. He's sort of fantasizing because he was an artist. He's fantasizing about his art and being able to, sculpt again, and all of the things that being incarcerated doesn't allow him to do, and so he is suffering back there, but he's still trying to hold his head high, right, with the suffering.
So they didn't even make mention of him being beat up, right? You just have to notice it. They had a conversation in the visitation, didn't mention it, right? But what he kept saying was, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to build my family a table." Basically, he was stuck on that, right, about building and providing for his family. And talking about how he'll be home, right? Because that's a sign of, it's a metaphor, right? For providing for your family, building a table, not, sitting at someone else's table too. So it's kind of like a double, maybe even a triple entendre in a sense.
Building a table that we can all eat from. We see that on social media all the time, right? People talking about being at tables and eating from the table and I want my own table, so it's much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, but she didn't mention, hey, you beat up, what's wrong? How are you doing?
So I'm going to say from a female perspective, what I wonder is, because there are things that women notice that they may not address that are obvious that are going on, especially if there's nothing you could do about it. and it may make your man, a man, men you're interacting with feel bad, right? So rather than let that be their discussion point, she acknowledges it. I guess she sees he's okay, and she just tries to not,
So maybe she
address
learned
it.
from that earlier interaction with the guy, where
You
he's
can't
like,
protect me, don't protect,
yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, imagine that, you see he's got a black eye. He's back there. There's nothing you can do. And bringing it up is painful because it's also going to be like somebody beat you up or, whatever. And you don't want to do that to your man. So
Yeah.
you just don't say anything.
But what about from the character's perspective? That's more like just in general, why you don't want to. Do you think that she takes on those characteristics?
Yeah, because I think regardless of what he said about not protecting her, she still wanted to protect him. And she did everything she could to protect him, even in spite of what he said, right? So yeah, I think this is where it was coming from. Then let's talk about black manhood and the fathers. So there's this moment of weakness with Tish's father where Bonnie's father and he are in this bar and they're talking or whatever. The father is just like, he's basically saying, well, a couple things we learned. He's like, Fonnie was a man from the beginning. And then he's like, how are we going to do this? Because they need money. They need money for the defense. And they also need money to be able to travel all the way to Puerto Rico to talk to the witness themselves, right? To the victim, herself. Because this isn't part of the investigation and they're having to prove that he is, that he's innocent as opposed to him being presumed innocent, right? So that's
just imagine the witness intimidation claims
and the pressure, right? And so the father is, Fonnie's father is really kind of like folding. I love Coleman Domingo's character, who he's Tish's father, and he's just like, hey man, and at one point he's basically like telling him, man up. He's like, am I gonna have to hit you? Something like that. I'm beat you up kind of thing, because and then he does appeal to him on a practical level. And he's like, look, we got to get Fonnie out. It's not an option to not try to get him out. And then we see Fonnie's father like, but the money. And Tish's father says, and you pointed to this earlier, don't worry about the money. And then he confesses how he raised his daughters, right? He got 2 daughters. He was robbing and stealing. He was robbing and stealing and selling or whatever to raise his daughters. And then he's like, look, we got a baby on the way. And I love how he says we, because it's the 2 fathers of these young people who are having a child who are like, we got a baby. The family has a baby on the way. Not
was
just
it that,
them.
or is it that, okay, the father is in jail, so now it's the grandfathers who have to step up into manhood?
Right? It's both. It's both. And so and then he's like, these are our children and we got to set them free. Because
I don't know if we just ignored the misogyny of these conversations that would be had. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I think of a perspective of a old-fashioned man, right? When they say we, I don't think they're talking about we in a sense as if someone now would be like, we're pregnant from the male perspective. You know what I'm saying? I think it's we as men have this baby that we have to take care of.
I agree.
Right now.
I completely agree. Like, I'm not missing it. I think he's saying we. I love that he says we, because somebody is stepping up.
But I don't think he's including women. The women who are involved, the family as a whole, is my point.
I'm not exactly 100% sure about Tish's father. Now, what's his name's father? Fonnie's father is, we got to talk more about him in a second. But Tish's father, I don't know. What I will say is he is the protector. He is a stereotypical man in doing traditional male roles for sure, right? But yeah, so I'm not 100% sure. But the point here he's making is don't worry about the money. And he's like, look, have you ever had any money? And, Fonnie's daddy's like, no. He's like, well, why are you worried about it now then? The white man wants you to be worried about money. That's their game. That is what he's telling him. He's like, they ain't never mentioned nobody that they didn't lie to and steal from. So in other words, like, so it's fine. Look, we're going to do what we need to do to get this money to take care of this baby that me and you, however you look at it, right, got on the way.
And I meant the term matriarchy probably, or patriarchy instead
Patriarchy,
of
yeah, as opposed to misogyny. Yeah, patriarchy. And then he goes on to say, if we came this far without the money, then we can do this. And then that is when they start boosting and selling clothes at the docks to raise the money that they need for Fonny's defense and to go to Puerto Rico so that they can talk to the victim. And I just am like, look, they doing what they had to do. Yeah. And I am not standing on some moral pedestal like, hey, stealing is wrong, or because at the end, them doing this, they're
so
like,
what if it was something different? What if it was selling drugs? Right, that's one cliche that always happens, right? And it's I have to go and do this because I think what it points to is basically going to the underworld to get what you need, in a sense.
So
it's a more acceptable way in this one.
So some people feel like, there's levels to this, victimless crimes, et cetera, et cetera. To sell poison to your community, and I acknowledge that if you never had to do it, and I put "had" in air quotes, then there is judgment coming with this statement I'm about to make. But to do that is like, there are direct victims of it. And I don't care if you're like, people want it and whatever the heck, that you have direct victims that you look in the face that are victims of what you're doing, right? As well as all the ones you don't see, their children, their families, and other people, with what's going on. Now, with the decision to boost, to fence, whatever, like that is robbing the corporation. And in a way, I feel very differently about that because of living in a capitalist world. And I'm just like, hey,
Yeah, but what about the choice to have it that way in the film, right? Like I was saying, we get... Nowadays, that's probably what's going to happen. Somebody going to be like, all right, I need to cook up something, right?
Yeah, let me get a brick or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and you still have the choice to, hey, we going to make some plates too, right? Then they didn't do that or whatever else. There's a whole slew of things that could be done to so-called raise funds, but this points to his past too, right? Like,
and the decision to make plates, okay, let's just think about this, right? Making plates is something that typically, a woman is going to do. Right, she's like, I can make some plates, and of course, men cook and all of that.
A man could be, okay. I'm trying to be in that time. A woman go cook the food so we could sell,
which is probably why he didn't, to support what you said earlier. Right, he's not putting the burden or figuring this out on the women. He's like, we got to figure it out, which means
figure out. So see, we're back to the hierarchy. The figure out is saying you and delegating. Right, we figured it out. Now we're gonna delegate to the women.
Yeah, but he didn't put the burden of that on the women.
Okay.
Which I think further supports what you're saying. Not just delegate, women go do this, but to recognize what was appropriate, right? To say, look, I'm not gonna say, look, I need you to cook up, Regina King's character, look here, I need y'all to cook 50 pies and then we're going to sell them. You know what I'm saying? No, He was like, look, I'm going to do what I know how to do and we're going to get it done. And that's just what it is. And so, so that's how I took that decision.
Yeah, but it points to his past too, right? Because we didn't get any of that really about all those other characters, but we know, okay, so maybe they have a little something going on. And now, because it was Tish's father, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who was just like, I know how to steal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we get, why we had those kind of clashes that seemed like they were based around some sort of class, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so that brings us back to what exactly did happen in this film. And let's first talk about the response to Tish being pregnant. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but Tish, her response is like she's afraid of how everybody else is going to take it. And she can't even process her own true feelings about, hey, I'm about to have a baby with this man who is hopefully only temporarily behind bars, right? But, she can't process that until she tells everybody and sees what they think. So then first person she tells is Fonny, and he is in jail at the time behind glass, and he's happy when he finds out, but he's happy after he asks her, what you gonna do?
Bruh.
Which reminds you of Chris Rock in his stand-up when he's like, that's what a man asks a woman when she's pregnant, what you gonna do, right? He asks her, what you gonna do? And she's like, well, I'm gonna do the same thing I've been doing, work up to almost the end, and then my sister and my mama gonna help me and so on. So Then when she goes and tells her mother, Trisha's mother is supportive, and her mother helps her to tell her father. The father is like, okay. And when he tells the father and the sister, she tells the father and the sister, and they're like, okay. The father is supportive, but he first makes sure, he's like, are you sure this is what you want to do? And she says yes, and he's like, all right then. And they are supportive. So then they're like, all right, let us help you tell Bonnie's parents. Bonnie's parents come over, and this is like one of the most wild scenes, you know. And Bonnie's parents come over, and the daddy, like you said earlier, the daddy's all excited alongside Trisha's father. He's just like, you know, they like, we gonna be, you know, granddaddies, whatever. But Fonny's mother completely snaps off. And the mother says, who gonna care for that child? I always knew you would be the destruction of my son. Like, whoa. Like the stuff she was saying was like relationship ending type of words that I don't even know if you could come back from. Because then she goes on to say, I guess you call your lustful action love. And then she quotes the Bible. And then she said, the child was born out of sin and the Holy Ghost will cause it to shrivel in your womb.
What
like
world?
When I tell you, but let me tell you, Bonnie's daddy smacked hot fire from her mouth after she said that.
Bruh.
And then Tish's father quickly ushers him out as things escalate. The women start arguing with each other. And then Fonny's mother is like, my daughters won't be bringing home no bastards for the feed and all of this and that. So part of it is because Fonny's parents have their butt on their back. They, you know, are like, they trying to be a little highfalutin, and they look down, even though I think everybody is working class, but they looking down on Tish and her family and with all of this religious judgment.
Was it justified?
Which part? The smack?
The smack.
Listen.
Because this was earlier in the film, so we got the rest of the film with this father just being there, right? Which informs how I think about their decisions and discussions later on in the film.
Listen, I'm not... that's a hard one. So what I said when we saw the scene is she needed to be smacked,
what
but
I
had a
was
problem.
Michael Beach is always some terrible character.
I said that she needed to be smacked, but not by him, right? So I needed her mama to smack him. I mean, to smack her, right? I needed for Tish's mother on Tish's behalf, because Tish is pregnant, to go ahead and smack hot fire from Fonny's mama for coming out her mouth with that stuff, disrespecting them up in their own house, talking crazy. Okay. And because it presents these, like this thing, because he done just bold-faced smacked his wife like this up in front of people and everything.
And so that's the thing, right? You get a character, you just rev them up real fast, make them bad, and then somebody do something that's kind of like, maybe you shouldn't be doing this, but then you're supportive of it because of how much you've quickly made this character unlikable.
Yeah. And I mean, I was like, okay. But at the same time, you could also tell from the dialogue that the father is not a religious man. And so there's that. And it's really kind of the mother who seems like she's off her rocker. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think she deserved the smack? I know this is a slippery slope for you as a man to say,
I would never say that. No. Because so this thing, it wasn't no threats or violence or nothing like that, right? It's just because something was said. You know what I'm saying? So that's not no woman. You know?
Yeah. Okay. How would you feel if Tish's mother had smacked Fonny's mother after she said that? That would have been, she deserved that to you? Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, whatever. But so that's what I'm saying. Like, so when I look at the fathers and stuff going on, you know, so Tish's father, right? You have to be amicable, like no matter what, right? If you know this guy is like this, then you still have to be able to work with him. Just like if you choose to have kids with somebody, then, you know, you have to accept them and all their faults, right? Because in the future, you're going to have a relationship with them and work together for different things for the child, right? So, but me as a viewer, I don't have that responsibility. I'm like, okay, this guy, I already making judgments about him and who he is. If you just smack your wife and then just keep on, you know, living, then I'm thinking about you a certain way.
Exactly. Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah. So, and maybe that makes it like, all right, he smacked his wife, so he probably be down to steal some things. You know what I'm saying?
Know someone who's obsessed with movies? Surprise them with the ultimate gift, a personalized 30-minute Axiom Amnesia deep dive on demand on their favorite film. For just $50, they'll get exclusive insights and see their name as executive producer. Get yours today at axiom.app. So, but this kind of leads into this idea of like the Black family, Black love, and all of that. And so, we have a few different examples. We have Fonnie and Tish. Okay, Fonnie and Tish are in love. It's the new love. It's, because they've known each other for a long time. And when it finally crosses the line, she's like, I knew he loved me when he gave my mother a gift of something he made with his hands, right? One of his pieces of art. And
yeah, that's an old trick.
Why you say that? Tell me.
What do you mean?
What do you mean an old trick?
That's an old trick. You could just do that. Hey, let me get a gift for so-and-so,
Okay.
And it's all back in the days, right? Oh, if the parents like me, then I'm in there. Still ain't work.
Huh. Yeah. And then we see Tish's parents, right? That Coleman Domingo and Regina King's characters. And they were, they had obviously been together a long time, and they were in love, though. They were very affectionate in the film, and the kids was like, look, y'all need to tone that down. Like they are in romantic love. But they're also solid behind their kids too at the same time. Like, I think this was a wonderful depiction. And then
yeah, but they were worried at first. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that the father was really all excited at first, right? Because the first thing was thinking,
because it's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem, but then it's all right. Now we're supportive.
Mm-hmm. And I also feel that the parents of the father have so many more options when even, she's living with her parents. So any baby she's bringing is coming into their home. But the father, his kid might live with him, might not, their parents, they're not impacted the same way when you have two young people like this. Although they had been looking for their own place, and these parents were well aware that they were looking to move out on their own even before all of this terrible stuff started happening, And then we have Fonnie's parents. And, we just talked about how he smacked that hot fire from her. I don't feel like this is the first time he ever smacked her. I think
probably not.
Maybe this was his way. She got out of line in his mind. And he
was always talking crazy.
And
I know she was always talking crazy.
She was always talking crazy. But that still does not mean that he should be, putting hands on her like that. And, and it's wild. And then I got the impression, and I could be wrong, but I think Fonnie was the only boy. So he's the boy. And then you got these daughters who are looking at this dynamic between the parents.
She's trying to trap him, right? Yes. Because the mother did, Fonnie's mother blamed Tish, right?
Mm-hmm. Not your son who was over there.
Yeah, like,
your son was the one who did it. Like, he was the one being smooth and slick. Come on in here and lay on down. I got you. You know what I'm saying? He was the one.
No, so there's not he was the one. It's both of them.
It was both of them. She did it willingly, but I'm just saying he made it real easy for that to be. Let me take you, get you some good eats. Let me treat you real nice.
And then they in a basement, bro.
And look, but so. Then we see another type of Black love, and that is the love of the parents for the children, and what they were willing to do, to what lengths they were willing to go in order to save their children from this terrible situation that ultimately they wound up not being able to save them from. But what I feel like is that Fonnie's parents tried to act like they were all down. Yeah, we talking to the lawyer. We doing, y'all might have even had a little bit more means than Tish's parents. But Tish's parents put their money where the mouth was. They made it happen as far as raising the money to try to get Fonnie out. Initially, they made it happen along with the daddy, helping a little bit. They made it happen to go and to get the money to go to Puerto Rico and try to make that. She was the mother, Tish's mother was the one who went to Puerto Rico. Fonnie should have been over there talking about my baby. You know what I'm saying? But Tish's mother is over there making it happen. So I'm like, and the thing is, and I'm not going to say there isn't love and that you don't love your kid and only these are the terms or whatever. But man,
I think that was her way of love, right? Basically.
Tough love, or
I
you talking
wouldn't
about
call it
Tisha's
tough
parents?
love. That's very cliche. I'm talking about Fanny's mother, right? I'm super religious, and I think life should be this way. And maybe shunning people and all that, right, is her way of love. I think we make the mistake to think that what we believe is exhibiting love is love,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I think that that's love to her.
All of this is love.
Yeah,
Even Fonny's
even
bad parents' relationship, they stayed together. They loved each other.
The negative things you do, right, quote, in the name of love is love, right?
Still love.
Even like if it's to the extreme and somebody get off, that's love. You know what I'm saying? You might not want to hear that. Well, you might not want to hear that, but that is
right.
Yeah.
It's all part of that thing.
Yep.
But what I do like is that everybody seemed committed and vowing to sticking together through it all. And that's worth something. That's definitely worth something. Yeah. Another thing I want to point out in this film is Tish, she worked at the department store, right? She was at the perfume counter, and she said something really interesting to me. So she proceeds to tell how each of the prospective customers approaches her when she's selling perfume, right? She, giving like nowadays they have the little card, they spray it on or whatever, and you could do spray it yourself, right? They don't have a woman standing there with the perfume most of the time. But back in the day, they had a woman who would stand at the counter and try to entice you to buy the perfume, and she would spray the perfume on her own hand, and then you would be, you were supposed to smell the perfume from her hand. Right. So Tish proceeds to tell how this goes. And she's like, only old white ladies come to smell the back of my hand, where she puts the perfume. She said, very rarely does a black cat come near the counter, talking about black men. And if he does, his intentions are often more generous, maybe because she reminds him of a helpless baby sister and he doesn't want to see her turn into a whore. This was very interesting word choice here, but let me finish. And so then, yet some black cats come closer to see what is happening. They never smell the back of her hand, though. They hold their hand out and you spray it, and then he carries the back of his own hand to his nostrils and he sniffs. He does not take her hand, touch her hand. And so this is a black man to this black woman behind the counter, right?
Yeah, meanwhile, Fonny father is smacking a woman, but keep going.
And putting his hands to his nostrils. Anyway,
He put his hands to her nostrils.
Shut up. Because that's not where this is going.
All right.
But it was funny.
It is where it's going. Keep going.
And then finally, a white man will take your hand and carry your flesh to his nostrils and hold it there for a lifetime, is what she said.
Yeah.
Listen, who's missing?
And who having the control of your body? Who is missing?
The black woman can't come up to buy no perfume. She doesn't buy perfume. The perfume you get is whatever
from a man,
is, no. You get the perfume from spraying it on yourself all day that belonged to somebody else, and that's it.
Oh, you mean the black woman? But I thought you were talking about from the patrons, right?
As a patron, there is no black patron.
Did you get a white woman?
Yeah. Well, you got an older white woman, at least. You didn't get a young white woman.
Yeah, but not about the smell, right? The story is about what a black man does and a white man does, right? This is who possibly buying for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess old white ladies have to buy it for themselves. And that's why they're buying it, but not young white women who get these perfumes as gifts, maybe from their husbands or suitors or whatever. But yeah, so here it's saying like the black man, he gonna spray his own hand and sniff it and smell it. He ain't touching you. And then the white man, oh yeah, he gonna touch you. He gonna pull you up to his nostrils and he gonna hold you forever for a lifetime. Go to the comments and tell me how you guys interpret this example that she's given us here and how we should be taking it. Because that should be for further discussion for sure. And then there were a couple of quotes in the film before we close out that I thought were really good. One of them is near the beginning of the film. Tish narrates, I hope that nobody has ever had to look at anybody they love through glass. Listen, did you know immediately when she said that she was talking about prison or jail?
Yeah, what else would it be?
Let me tell you, oddly, when I heard that line, because, you know, you're not looking at him right when she says that. When I heard that line, I was like, looking at somebody through good. Because, you know, I'm thinking I'm in the artistic kind of a mode. I'm not thinking literally looking at them through glass, right? I'm thinking of looking at them through, you know, colored lenses. And, you know, I'm going someplace else with it. And then when I see old boy locked up,
Yeah.
it's just a reality. Like, I wanted to dream and have this whole thing be, you know, this flowery experience. Oh, looking through glass. Oh, I hope you don't. And then it's like, why would you say you hope they don't? And then you see, And I just hated the reality of it. I hate the reality of it right now for, you know, all of the brothers and sisters who are seeing, for anybody who has to see their loved one behind glass. But especially the ones who are innocent and didn't do anything or didn't do certainly enough for whatever punishment was doled out to them. You know, I feel, and that made me feel not good watching the film. But this isn't a film to make you feel good, I don't think. What do you think about that quote?
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
What about when Tish's mother, at one point, you know, Tish gets weary. She's pregnant, had this baby and all of that, and she gets weary. And her mother's telling her, you know, look, if you trusted love this far, trust it all the way.
Right, yeah. I think it goes back to my beef with, you know, the use of the song at the end, right? And just it being extrapolated to this idea of, you know, I guess white supremacy or whatever other systemic racism thing that's going on, because the whole film, right? It's about, hey, if you trust it, it's not including that when you talk about love and how they gonna make a way and how they gonna get this money and all of this stuff, right? It's that this whole thing is in an entire black world, and the only thing that really interfered was a white cop who was an outsider who was policing the neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even with all that, you may be under you know, this nation, this economic system and everything. Our lives is where it is. And it's something Daniel Coffeen calls bound infinity, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have all these choices of doing things, and we don't have a choice but to make it out of this and or make it through this and live in this world. And, you know, love is one of the things that we use, right? But there's these situations where something from the outside can upend that. And that's what happened in this movie. It's a black love story. But there's this outside incident that really, you know, caused some problems.
And it, you know, do you think the ending is happy? Because I'm like, this ending is not happy.
It's not, because with all that love, you know, it wasn't enough. You know what I'm saying? Just straight love, this doesn't appear to have been enough. And even inside that, you know, all black world, it just wasn't, we just couldn't do it.
Right.
Right? Like, yeah, it's a very sad story.
You know, in these situations, all we really got is each other. And
man, that was in some movie.
You know,
and Isaiah Washington character was like, all black folks ever have is each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's how I feel. Oh, it was one of those movies.
It was maybe
about
something the Lord made.
Yeah, something the Lord made, I think, because he was Mos Def's older brother in that movie. His character's older brother.
It was like, at least we got each other.
At least we got each other. But yeah, I mean, and that's how I feel. Like, you know, in the end, when I think about it, the people who I love, who I'm close with, my family, that's who I have. That's whose back I have. That's who has me. And the rest of it is just a toss up, you know, especially given being a black person in America. You know, I don't know that I can depend on anybody outside of that, you know, and, you know, and that's just the reality. I mean, and I don't even be moaning at this point. It's just, that is the reality that I accept, that is the case. And it doesn't mean that I wouldn't fight for things to be better. It just means that this is the current reality, and I need to be operating in that if I expect to be best, to have the best outcomes, you know. But this movie, it's a tough movie. You know, it's a tough movie. Because in the end, like I said, I wanted to see them be able to hold each other and love each other that same way, and and be able to walk out together, and heck, take their little boy up the street to the ice cream truck in Harlem. That's what I wanted to be able to see in it, and you just don't get that, but that's life too. I really want to thank the executive producer King James, who has selected some amazing films for us to cover on Deep Dive on Demand. He also was the one who suggested Exhibiting Forgiveness, which we'll link in the description, which is another heartfelt film. So thank you so much, King James. We really appreciate this.
If you made it this far, type Harlem in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out the video that's on the screen right now and go to axiom.app, where you'll find all of our recent videos in one place where you can link back to YouTube and watch them here.